Who are we and what is our purpose? We have an opportunity, even in the midst of a pandemic, to show people what the church is really about. Yes, we have divisions. Yes, we have history of racism and everything else. Yes, we'll still probably have problems after the crisis is over. But what can we do now?
Well, thank you for watching another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lisa Fields, the founder of the Jude 3 Project. And today I'm joined by a very special guest, a friend of mine and the Jude 3 Project, Mr. Justin Giboney. Welcome, Justin.
Hey, Lisa, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us again. You've been on here before. For those who may not know who you are, just give them just a little bit of background about yourself.
Absolutely. So I am the president of the AND campaign. I'm an attorney by trade. And also I've been doing, I'm in Atlanta. I've been doing political strategy, campaign management, and stuff like that for over a decade. So really involved, I think my calling is just the intersection between faith and politics is my focus.
That's awesome. And we're on here today to talk about the CHC Challenge, Church Helping Churches Challenge. Tell our audience just a little bit about that. You've got a team together. Jude 3 Project is on board as well, and other organizations. What kind of was the motivation behind the challenge, and what is the challenge?
Yeah, so I've always had a heart for small churches. My grandfather pastored a small church for over 40 years, and so I've always had a heart for that. And when the pandemic hit, just in conversation, so the AND campaign has a pretty large network of churches, and just in conversations with my friends who are the pastors of smaller churches, it became very clear that there was a lot of anxiety about whether they would even survive this crisis. Lisa, that when you have a smaller church, you're usually not getting that much income in anyway. And then when people start losing their jobs, or you have an older congregation that doesn't really get online to give, you very quickly run into a situation where you might not be able to pay the bills the next month. And so that was on my heart. I ended up, and just hearing what people were saying, I ended up tweeting out something about, it would be great if larger churches, especially majority churches, would help some of these smaller minority churches make it through this crisis, that would show what the church really is. And this would be the time to really start caring for one another and showing what the church is really about. Got a call from some friends. Some people shared it, but got a call from some friends like, man, this is an excellent idea. You should really do something about it. So I called up some influencers that I knew, called up some donors. Everybody was really into it. And I said, okay, well, let's do it. Of course, you were one of the people I called, Lisa, one of the first people I called, because I know your heart for the church. And just happy to have you on the executive board doing all this and all the work you've put in. But really just very quickly got a strong group of people who were committed. And because we're all kind of at home, right, social distancing, we had some time to put something together in a week that's becoming really, really large at the moment.
So share what we're challenging churches to do, because it's not just alongside with, we want people to give and donate to the fund so we could help these churches with small grants. But what are we also challenging churches to do in their own community?
Yeah. So the main thrust, Lisa, of this initiative is to get large churches to give to smaller churches in their area. We want larger churches who may be making it through this situation more comfortably to look around them, look maybe on the other side of the tracks for smaller churches who are struggling through this moment. I mean, as you know, a lot of these smaller churches are still the foundation of their community. When people are hungry, when people need spiritual uplift, that's where they go. So the worst case scenario would be that we get through this crisis and we look around and we don't have any of those small churches there. So the Churches Helping Churches Challenge is us encouraging larger churches, reaching out to larger churches, letting them know where the need is, giving them the contact information for these smaller churches, and saying, we need you to step up for these churches now. And the truth of the matter is, so far, it hasn't taken that much pushing. But the other thing is that we want to make sure that we were doing our part, Lisa, that the AND campaign and some of our partners like the Jude 3 Project were coming and saying, you know what, let's set up our own fund. Let's see what we can raise. So we created the COVID-19 Church Relief Fund. And what we're trying to do is raise $500,000, and we're almost getting closer to about 200,000, maybe halfway there by the end of the week. And we just wanted to say, okay, let's take applications, and then we'll give a grant of $3,000 to smaller churches to help them get through this moment. And in the conversations that I've had, I think we already have over 250 applications, and we're, as of probably tomorrow, we'll be giving our first grants out through the National Christian Foundation.
That's awesome. I'm really, really excited about it. And I'm thankful that you spearheaded this idea and put the work in and used all your resources. Because one thing I really appreciate about you, Justin, is you don't just talk about things, you actually put the work in. You're not just a Twitter advocate, you're in person, boots on the ground, actually doing tangible things. What for the churches that are listening, that are led by small churches, what does the application process look like for them?
Yeah, so you would go to our website, which is churchrelief.org, and you would simply apply. So you'd put the name of your church. Whoever's applying would have to be someone who's an officer at the church, of the church, so that we know they're speaking for the church. We would want you to be in a low-income area, so we will check to make sure that it's in a low-income area. We'd want to see a statement of faith just to make sure that it was a biblical church, and so on. But we make it pretty simple. It can all be electronic. We want to see some documentation that you are registered with the state, things of that nature. But it should be very quick. And we want to try to get as much money out to these churches as possible fast. But if you are in need, you should go to churchrelief.org, and we'll do our best to get you some help. The churches that we can't fund through our fund, we will try to refer them to larger churches just to say, hey, these are some churches that are still in need. Can you help them?
That's awesome. And I think that's really helpful for those who are listening to say, well, why do we have to do that? That doesn't the CARES Act take care of it? Can you kind of explain what the challenge is with the CARES Act for smaller churches?
Absolutely. So when Lisa talks about the CARES Act, she's talking about the federal legislation to give relief to small businesses, to individuals, and all that stuff. Thankfully, because of some of the work that some Christian organizations have done on Capitol Hill, faith organizations are included in the small business portion of that. So faith organizations can get some of this trillions of dollars that's been placed out there for relief at this moment. And that's great. I think it's a blessing. I've had questions of whether that would kind of harm us when it comes to religious liberty, or can we still speak out against, the president or anybody else if we take the money? None of that should be a problem. This isn't a matter of religious freedom or any of that stuff being abridged, but it is an opportunity to help churches survive. The issue with the CARES Act is that we're not exactly sure how long it could take. We've had conversations with some of the people who actually were lobbying for this legislation to make sure that churches were a part of it, with attorneys out in DC who've been close to this conversation, and many of them still aren't exactly sure how long it's going to take. Something it could take up to 60 days, and then Lisa, for small churches, just applying in general could be very hard. They may not have the resources to even apply. So what we said was, hey, we can't wait for the government. We hope that assistance comes. We hope to help churches that want to apply on some level, but we can't wait for that, because the fact of the matter is, Lisa, the church is mostly responsible for doing that anyway. We are the ones that should be the first ones on the scene to help our brothers and sisters who are small at-risk churches, again, that will not survive this if we don't reach out and lend them a helping hand.
That's awesome. And one of the things that about this this challenge is it helps bridge the gap with reconciliation. Can you talk about a little bit what our goal is behind reconciliation with this project?
Yeah. So I get a lot of questions about reconciliation, especially from majority organizations, majority leaders. And I tell them, look, if you want racial reconciliation just to be some kumbaya, if you want to get together and just have a conversation, we can do that, because fellowship is important. But we really have to get to where the rubber meets the road. You have African American, Hispanic, and we even have some Native American churches who have applied who are barely making it. And so I always say, if we're really going to talk about reconciliation, we need to either be talking about policy, how we can change policy to help racial minorities, or we need to be talking about funding. And this is really where the COVID-19 Church Relief Fund comes in. When you can provide funding, when you can be self-sacrificial and give more than just words, give of yourself, come out of your comfort zone, then we can have a real conversation about and move forward on the racial reconciliation conversation. But we can't do it if we're going to ignore all the history, ignore the disparity when it comes to finances among races. We're not going to ignore those things. And I am just encouraged, even though we have a long way to go in a lot of different areas, I'm encouraged by how a lot of majority organizations, majority churches have stepped up and said, we want to help because we see the importance of this. Does that get us all the way where we need to be? No, it doesn't. But I do think that it's a step in the right direction. And the AND campaign, and I know Jude 3 Project is saying, we want to give people the opportunities to reconcile. We want to give people opportunities to do the right thing. And for the church, which is divided, and we know that from the Bible that it shouldn't be divided, we want to give people opportunities to start coming together and kind of mend some of the division in the church. And I think this is a good start.
That's awesome. One of the things that I think people are struggling with right now is advocacy in this moment. What are some things that you think the everyday person can do? Because we still see the political divide even in this very moment of a pandemic, and there's so much there's so many articles going around, and you don't know really if a person is helping or hurting the situation. You only know by the rhetoric. So the more eloquent a person is, you tend to think they're actually being helpful. But then you see another article that says they're hurting other people. So like I'll take, for instance, I think Governor Cuomo is doing an excellent job, but then my friends in New York was like, no, he's not good. And so I'm like, oh, well, I don't know, because I'm not in New York, but he seems to be leading well in this moment. How do we navigate that up to know kind of who has our best interests? And I know we can never fully know, but what are some helpful things to look for, not just rhetoric?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you hit it on the head. A lot of times it's just hard to tell. A lot of times it just depends on who you ask. I've had a lot of the same conversations. My old roommate lives in New York. He has one opinion. I have another homeboy who lives in New York who might have a different opinion. It's really hard to tell. The one thing that I would tell people is to always try to find, writers and folks like that you trust. That doesn't mean that you don't apply any kind of critical thinking to what they say, but you can kind of follow them, and if they're intellectually honest, it may help you discover what's going on. But right now, I don't even think what's important is any type of partisan or I like this guy, I don't like that guy. I think what's important is trying to find a way to help, because there's been mistakes made all around. And I think when this is over, we can go mistake by mistake. And if we want to find blame, we can do that. But right now, I think what Christians need to do is find a way to help somebody next to them, right? And it could be as simple as calling your friends. And, if you have a friend that doesn't have a lot of people around them, or that you haven't talked to in a while, just calling and checking on people. But again, and this is a little bit of, I guess, a promotion for what we're doing. I think that Churches Helping Churches initiative is a huge opportunity. I mean, you can give a lot or you can give a little, but 100% of these proceeds are going to churches. 100% of it is going to be going to churches. So even if you give $2, $5, it's going to be used to go to a church that's needed. And like I said before, these are the churches that are helping their communities and that these communities need. So I would try, I'm a political guy. I talk about politics and policy all the time. I'm trying to be as apolitical, so to speak, as possible when it comes to this. I'm trying not to be partisan or political when it comes to this conversation, because everybody's hurting. Everybody's going through something. A lot of mistakes have been made. We can figure that out when the time comes. But we just need to be focused on making sure that we're protecting ourselves and protecting others, staying safe and helping people where we can. And even when we're sitting in our house, I think projects like the Churches Helping Churches Challenge gives us an opportunity to help. So we should just be looking for those opportunities, in my opinion.
That's helpful, and I think a necessary word to help us not be so caught up in the politics of it all, but to move on the human need that's very present in this moment. When we think about going back to the CARES Act, a lot of people in church that may have lost their jobs don't really understand what it all entails. From your vantage point, kind of just give a brief overview for those who are listening. That's like, I've lost my job. I'm really struggling. I have a small business. I don't know what to do. Does this provide relief for me?
Yeah. So the CARES Act covers a lot of ground. The good thing about when the CARES Act came through, there's almost something in it for everybody. So whether you were employed, if you were employed and you got laid off, there's an expansion of unemployment in there that's very robust. Depending on how much money you make, if you don't make, I think over $75,000, you're going to get $12,000 direct check to you. Or you can get that direct deposit depending on what you have already filed with the IRS. So there's something in it for a lot of people. When it comes to the SBA, and the SBA is a small business administration, and you are a nonprofit, or you're just you just run a small business that's for profit, you can go to their website and there's an application to sign up for the relief. There's a decent amount of money. Most of it is pointed to, more than a decent amount of money, but most of it is pointed towards keeping people employed. So if you have employees, if you're employed through your own organization, there's going to be money to keep people employed. And I think they did a good job in making sure that it was focused on that. Giving money, but make sure the money was pointed towards keeping people employed, even when they couldn't, be at the office, and then giving direct money to people as well. There's a conversation to be had about whether it's enough money going directly to individuals. I think that's fair, but there is something in it for everybody, and so we need to work. I would expect that there may be one more piece of legislation coming out to help people, because I think we're seeing that this is going to be a little longer. Social distancing and these shutdowns are going to be a little longer than we expected. But there's a lot of different resources too. And let me say this, you can go on the churchrelief.org website and get some more information about the CARES Act as well. But there's a lot of different information out there. A lot of organizations are making it easy for people to get involved. And one of the things that we'll be doing with our initiative on the back end is helping Christians apply for those things and giving them resources so that they know exactly what to do and take some of the guesswork out of it for them.
That's awesome. What projects does the AND campaign have coming up outside of the Church Relief Challenge?
Yeah, I mean, well, we had a lot of stuff going on, as you know, but once this stuff got shut down, it seems like a lot of stuff got shut down. I myself have probably canceled 6 or 7 speaking engagements, and that's just the way it is. One of the big things that the AND campaign has coming up is our book is coming out. So myself, Michael Ware, who's my partner in the AND campaign, another partner, Chris Butler, who is a politico and pastor out in Chicago, we wrote a book. And it's called Compassion and Conviction. It's the AND campaign's guide to faithful civic engagement. And this is really the AND campaign's framework. If you're a Christian who may be a Democrat or a Republican, but you're really trying to find a way to be faithful in that and to be a Christian before you're any of those things, that's going to be the book for you, because it really breaks down in a very biblical way and a very Bible study friendly way how Christians should think about politics. So we talk about, should Christians engage politics? How should we do that? How should we, when we talk about rhetoric, when we talk about civility, what is the true relationship between church and state? All those things are covered in this book. Great reading for a time. If we're still locked down in July, because it comes out on July 21st, it's great reading, but I really think it's going to help the body think differently about how we engage politics. That's our number one thing. We'll be promoting that. But as for now, you and I have a lot of applications on our hands. So I think our hands are full with this Churches Helping Churches Challenge.
That's what's up, Justin. That is extremely helpful. What do you want to say to our audience about the Churches Helping Churches Challenge that we haven't already discussed?
Just generally, who is the church when a crisis happens? Who are we and what is our purpose? we have an opportunity, even in the midst of a pandemic, to show people what the church is really about. Yes, we have divisions. Yes, we have history of racism and everything else. Yes, we'll still probably have problems after the crisis is over. But what can we do now? And I think we all have to have the grace to give others an opportunity to do the right thing, to bring about awareness about what's going on in our communities, and to say, hey, it's time to have for others to have a helping hand and for us to help in some way too. So one of the things that we're trying to do with the Churches Helping Churches Challenge is create relationships, right? The beauty of our fund is that it's no strings attached. So anybody who gives to our fund, you can't go to that church and say, hey, I want you to do this, 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 and this to get it. No, this is no strings attached. We're not telling you what to do with it. We're transparent, and we want to make sure that it's actually a church and all that stuff, but we're handing it over. But we want to make sure that these are relationships, so that when we say, okay, there's 3 churches in Chicago that need some help, when we go to a larger church and let them know where those churches are, we want them to build relationships, because the truth is, Lisa, that small church probably has some things that it can teach that larger church, especially when it comes to race, when it comes to working through situations where you don't have a lot of resources, being resourceful and dealing with people in different situations that larger church may not have to deal with. We want to build those relationships. So we don't think we're going to come out of this and everything be perfect. But I know that you believe this too. We got to try to bring about some conciliation, to bring about some unity. And I just thought this was an opportunity to say you care. You're telling me you care. Well, show us that you care, and helping other people in the body of Christ who may not survive if somebody doesn't reach out and help. And I think that's the bottom line. It's about relationship. There's an underlying theme that's about conciliation between this divided church. We got a lot of work to do, but I think this is a very encouraging step, Lisa.
That's important, and I think it helpful. I love that the best practices are on the website, and one of the things that I just remembered was um, be open to new ideas. And I think that is really important, especially for smaller churches, because I think a lot of people miss. And I was talking to my friend about this, and he was like, "Oh, I didn't even think about smaller churches that are led by a pastor that's elderly. Most of the congregants are elderly. They don't have online giving set up, or if they do, nobody uses it.
Yep.
They don't know." I was watching a live stream last night, and the pastor was trying to set it up, him and his wife, and they're elderly, and you could tell they were fumbling trying to set it up. But then I was just like, so imagine the fact that they're going to go 2 months without anybody giving, because they could say, well, mail in your gift, but elderly people then have to get out their house to go to the post office to mail in their gift. Um, and so when a majority culture church is thinking about, oh, well, they just text to give, it's like, no, they don't even have that set up. Nobody feels comfortable using it. And if the church is older, they don't have any young members to help them in this time. So they just die out. So one of the things I think is important is helping those churches innovate going forward, which is something I know that is on your heart as well as mine. How should we be thinking about younger people? Should be thinking about helping our elders innovate in this time.
That's a good question. And I think one thing you have to do is actually understand their needs, right? If you're a person who, you may go to one church, but you know of a church who may be struggling, reach out, give them a call. There may be things that you can teach them over the phone. We know that we can't necessarily be in the same room with everybody, but there may be ways that you can give them instruction that even when it's something like starting a Facebook page, something like that, you may be able to walk them through that. We take for granted how much we know and how easy it may be for us to kind of maneuver through all the technology and all that. Everybody doesn't know that. So I would just sit down, maybe even go through my phone and just think of people who may be going to a church that is struggling right now. Number one, you can get them to apply to the Churches Helping Churches Challenge. That's one thing you could do. Or you can really sit down and think through with them ways that you can be helpful. Technology seems so easy to be used, but if you don't have that knowledge base, if no one's ever shown it to you, then you just don't know. So use that to be helpful. And I think it would help everybody just to take 30 minutes to an hour just to think about who you can help. Go through your phone, think about who you can help, and you never know. You may run into somebody and end up saving their church from being shut down because you took the time to care and to really think about who could be helped.
Yeah, that's vital, and I think everybody knows someone. It's probably the church you grew up in, your grandmother's church. Um, you may
Sure.
go to the fancy church with the lights and all the tech now, but the church you grew up in is probably not going to make it through this without your help. So this is an opportunity for you to be a resource to
That's
invest in
real.
the people who invested in you when you were coming up.
That's
Don't
it.
forget and don't think, oh, it's better in this side. We have the church, we got all the stuff, and just leave those people behind because you wouldn't be where you are without those people. So remember them in this time. Um, Justin, how can people get in contact with you on
That's all right.
social media?
Yeah, so my social media handle is Justin E Giboney, Giboney, Justin E Giboney. That's for Twitter and Instagram. So you can holler at me there, or you can get in touch with the AND campaign with the handle at AND campaign, or just go to our website andcampaign.org.
Thank you so much, Justin. It's been a pleasure having you on the podcast. Make sure you check out the End Campaign and make sure you get their new book when it comes out in July. I believe that's when you said July, right?
July 21st. That's right.
Yeah, July 21st. Make sure you get that. Remember, here at the Jude 3 Project, we're helping you to know what you believe and why you believe it. And before we go, make sure you check out our new curriculum, Through Eyes of Color, a contextualized guide to helping you know what you believe and why. And you can also become a monthly partner at jude3project.org. Until next time, grace and peace. God bless.